It's Damon and Robert's 5 Songs, a podcast starring Damon and Robert. 10 songs enter, 10 songs leave. It's not that kind of podcast.
That.
Blast off. We are live, sir. We are live on tape from our respective homes.
That's right. Distantly.
Good morning, Mr. Allen. How are you, sir?
Good, thanks. And how are you?
I am good, sir. Thank you. It's fine.
Good,
It's a Saturday morning during the spooky season here,
it's
right?
a Saturday afternoon.
Saturday afternoon.
Behind the
Correct.
curtain.
Correct. Correct. I'm still wishful thinking, for those morning hours.
That's right. If only.
So we have kind of a special little episode today, don't we? We're not doing, instead of just 10 songs, we're doing more than 10 songs. We have some
increasingly misnamed this podcast.
Exactly, right? We're like, it's Damon and Robert's 12 songs now.
That's
maybe?
right.
Like one
rolls off the tongue.
That's right, one for every month. It'll be like our own little advent calendar.
A song for each season.
Exactly. So we picked our 5, and then we picked one extra just because, and I think they're all kind of thematically around the Halloween season. Would that be fair to say?
It's fair to say, and also the reason that I picked 6, this is sinister. It's our 6th episode. We now each have 6 songs in the 6th episode.
That's 3 6s, Robert.
We have ourselves the number of the beast, or
that is
a number of a beast.
Right. One of the beasts.
Yeah,
maybe one of the smaller beasts, the lesser.
Yeah.
One of the lesser known beasts. Yeah.
Bob.
Well, see, exactly. You can join our 666 club here today on the podcast. Let me see. Let's talk about numbers. Now, those will be a little different, but we both picked 6 songs, so I think it's still comparable. Right, so runtime on Robert's list this week, 39 minutes exactly.
Ooh.
Runtime on Damon's list, 23 minutes, 2 seconds. So there's a chunk of difference in there. Most of that's that Bauhaus song we'll talk about. It's like 11 minutes long.
It does go on.
Yeah,
yes.
It does. And so it kind of hardly counts this week. I think the difference is negligible in feeling. It's bigger in numbers than it feels, I guess. The earliest tune on Robert's list, 1979. Earliest tune on Damon's list, 1979. It's the first time I think we've ever both gone all the way back to 79, and we went back for some weird stuff too. Not what folks are like, what were they doing in 79? These probably aren't what you would have thought of.
I was 5 years old, so not
exactly,
a whole lot.
Yeah, precisely. I don't know what people were doing. If it was on Sesame Street, I was pretty up to it. Otherwise, the latest on Robert's list, 2019. So pretty recent. Again, Robert generally picking more recent stuff. Damon, latest 1992. So that's like it's like 32 years ago, Damon. So not super recent, understandably so. But not that these lists are not banging. There's some banging stuff on both of these lists.
That's the goal.
It was a banging list kind of episode. I mean, they're all banging list kind of episodes, to be true.
That's right.
But this
have we picked a bad song? Of course not.
666. No, of course not. Why would we do that? That's exactly the opposite of what we're here to do. We're here to pick the good songs.
Exactly.
Talk about the good songs. So where shall we start, sir? Did I start last time, or did you start?
We never ever track this.
You start this time.
Fine.
Just because. I don't know why.
All right. Song 1, Damon, episode 6. 6 songs. Something. All right. It's Pain by Alice Cooper. It's like you like Alice Cooper a little bit.
I do make you listen to a lot of Alice Cooper.
You do. And this one, I have to say, is very tame. It's a very tame Alice Cooper song. There's no schlock horror in this song. There's no grinning madman in this song. I was kind of looking for the blood and the guillotine and the dead babies and found none.
Yeah, see, that's right. No, that's true. It's a bloodless pain.
It is. It's a fine song, but it's not his finest song by any stretch. It feels kind of like a Broadway salute to Alice Cooper more than straight Alice Cooper.
Very piano driven, kind of a Broadway number, instrumentation wise. I see that.
Yep. Not the darkest song that I would have picked for Halloween. You certainly get there. Don't get me wrong.
Oh yeah.
So you started off kind of, let's say, light.
light. Yeah, that's fair. I think
So how did this
light.
earn its way onto your list?
Pain is an Alice Cooper song off. This is 1980. So Flush the Fashion was the album he released in 1980, and it was kind of called a half-hearted new wave makeover by critics. Like he had a different producer. He
Hmm.
worked with a different guy that he'd never worked with. Usually he worked with Bob Ezrin. Like he had one producer for most of his career up to this point, and he
Right.
sort of went with a different guy who had been producing like the Cars and Queen and like a lot of these like big 80s acts that were hitting really big in the 80s but with like a different kind of sound. And so yeah, it's a really bizarre album. And this is just like everything on it sounds different. Pain doesn't sound like anything else on it, and there's a lot of kind of new wavy sort of instrumentation that he did. I just think it's a fun like personification of the idea of pain as
Mm.
kind of a narrator to a song is kind of a neat way to do what to your point. It is kind of like a Broadway, almost like a torch song. Like I'm telling
Yeah,
you all
yeah,
these
yeah.
beautiful things about myself, but I'm really unfolding like all these terrible ways that I make people suffer because I'm pain, this thing. So it was just an interesting. It's one of my favorite Alice Cooper albums. Also one of the shortest Alice Cooper albums, less than a half an hour long.
Wow.
Yeah, this was the three albums that follow this are traditionally referred to as his blackout albums that he does not remember making or touring for. But
The
this
drugs
one
were
is
that
kind
good.
of yeah, exactly. Yeah, he had a serious cocaine problem during those years and just lost it all. He's like, I don't remember writing them. He's like, I wrote them, I recorded them, I toured for all of them, and I'm like, that's not true. You only toured for one of them because you were so
Wow.
blasted. Yeah, but
Yeah.
anyway, this was the record before those.
Okay.
So it's got like you can see it. He's taking some chances. He's like swinging for the fences, doing like weird things with this different producer and a lot of different sounds. Um, my brother had this on 8-track. I used to listen to it like every day on the way to like my first grade Lutheran private school. My brother would crank Alice Cooper on the 8-track in his Monte Carlo. And anyway, that's what stuck with me. Obviously, the private school was just a year because that's expensive. My parents couldn't afford that. So there was a 1 year of that, but I learned more from Alice Cooper than I learned from the year of private school. I
As
think
is
that's what I
appropriate. Sure.
maintain.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is a fun tune off of kind of a kooky 1980 album for Alice Cooper, and yeah, kind of a gentle way to ease us into
This is not the tack that I took. I didn't ease us in. I went kind of
no.
for the jugular.
You did, didn't you? Let's
Yeah.
address that.
Please
Let's talk about that. So,
dive in.
number one on Robert's list is Walk With Me in Hell by Lamb of God. And I think this is off of the 2006 album, Sacrament. I actually listened to it on like the anniversary edition of Sacrament,
Nice.
which was awesome.
A
So
fine choice.
exactly. Yeah. And Lamb of God feels like this weird niche because they were really big. They were one of the first huge metal bands that I remember being huge after I kind of like dropped out. Like I didn't know who that. I remember seeing somebody in a Lamb of God shirt. And I'm like, what is that? And I
Yeah.
went and like found out. I'm like, oh, it's a band I don't know anything about. And they, had so anyway, I've been kind of aware of them, but it always felt like I kind of missed them. Like they were a band that had just sort of happened at a minute when I didn't grab them. So I was really curious to hear this because I don't know much about their music. Um, and I spent way too long trying to figure out how to describe this intro, like the guitar sound that they get here, because it's an awesome sound and it reminds me it's kind of like a high pitched, kind of Coheed and Cambria, like Vic the Butcher intro, sort of that. But it always reminds me of like spiders crawling on webs, like that. Dee, 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 dee. It's like a really nerve wracking, kind of spine tingling sort of riff that it opens with. And this is super guitar heavy, man, and like really riff driven too, which is fun. But yeah, I
Hmm.
mean, like it opens with like this really fast, like super slick riff. Actually, I watched a video of like a German guy trying to figure out this riff, and it was amazing. He's like, this is crazy. We had to slow it down like 60% to do it. So it's really fast and really intricate. And it does this, like it kind of moves from that intro and it sort of keeps that heavy lead guitar like through the whole thing, through the verse too. And yeah, so clearly clearly like a band for whom the guitar is important and like really steps up front and like a super crunchy sound. And the vocal style like varies a little bit too. He's got that kind of harsh vocals in some places, real deep vocals, but then it also kind of goes to like a raspy, kind of high pitched, that's more kind of like um, a metal voice, more like I don't want to say a Halford, but something that's got like an edge to it, maybe more like a Dickinson, something like with a
Ooh,
maybe not quite that. I might reach a little
not
high, but
operatic. Yeah.
not operatic, but but kind of that, sort of like an edge to cut through, and it's a nice contrast to that deep voice, right? Like story wise, I think this is a song that seems like more about energy and drive than about the lyrics to me. Like the lyrics are basically, I can't tell if the basic gist is like, this world will be great, it'll be heaven once all these Christians go away. Or something like this of like, stay with me here. Like this is hell right now, but once they're gone, it'll be great. I think that that was one way I read it. But and yeah. so I don't know
it's a
that
weirdly optimistic song because it's
yeah.
like, you're not alone. We're walking through this together.
Right.
But yes,
That's right. He says that several
dark.
times, right? I feel
Yeah.
like we're not alone. But yeah, I've been thinking about like how to talk about songs like this one, because it's and I think my mistake has been like trying to approach them sort of like from a narrative, which is not what they're about. Like they're about that energy,
Right.
they're about like the sound, they're about the feeling that they create. So yeah, I think this song has like the feeling that it creates is tight and really curated, and it is kind of a super optimistic song in a weird way. Yeah,
Hmm.
it doesn't sound optimistic, but yeah, but it is very much like a we're all in this together. Like you're walking with us, we're with you, we're not going to leave you in this. So yeah, it strikes that kind of like metal community chord for me
Right.
that always really resonates. And whenever I look at something and I'm like, why do people feel so strongly about this? I'm like, that's part of it, man. It's part of it. It's tribal. It's like
Right.
I love this, like this, we all sort of have a response, a shared response to the same thing. So yeah, tell me about your relationship with Lamb of God. Like, how you a big fan, or is this like tell me about your personal relationship,
So
Robert,
such a
with the
strange
Lamb
way to
of
phrase it.
God.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't.
Well,
I realized after I said it that maybe that was a little more youth pastor than I wanted to be.
so what's dark about this is that their old name that they couldn't carry on because I think the record label went, hell no, was Burn the
Burn the
Priest.
Priest, right? Yeah, I read
Yes.
that was their original band.
So
It's awesome.
they kind of took it and twisted it into, well, we're still dark, but
right.
at least now we look like we're, yeah. This was
awesome.
the first album I heard by them.
Yeah.
This is, I think, their third or fourth album. So they're part of what was called like the new wave of Southern heavy metal.
Okay.
They're from Richmond, Virginia.
Gotcha.
Another band that was big at the same time that rose up was Mastodon.
Okay. Yep. Heard of
Out of Atlanta, Georgia. Gosh, there's probably 4 or 5 other ones that I can't think of right now. But they were kind of in the early aughts, mid aughts, this new wave of metal that was kind of in response to metal has kind of been on hard times for a while.
Right.
But there was a resurgence, and they're part of it. I really like this song because it's atmospheric. It definitely has that, like you said, that riff where he's dancing along fast.
Yeah, it's really fast. Yeah.
Yeah. And it is a song, again, you're right, a community about sort of optimism, even through, I think it's
literal hell. Maybe.
Right.
Yeah.
What is it? Of course, I'm going to blank.
Oh.
Churchill.
No pressure.
When going through hell, keep going. Yes,
that's right. Yeah.
That perfect summation for this song. Don't go alone and go with someone else, but keep going.
Right.
So I thought, for the spooky season, hell is a good place to visit. Not stay, but visit.
That's right. You don't want to stop.
Remember,
keep going.
Right. That's right.
Just keep moving. Yeah.
So I think that's a good opener. I think that's a fine way to establish ourselves as into the right mood and atmosphere and the joy of spooky season.
That's right. We are slipping into the spooky season vibe. Well, Mr. Allen, what is my number 2, sir?
You are number 2. Oh, my phone has gone to sleep, as if I'm not doing notes here. All right. Was Evil by Merciful Fates.
Evil.
So the horror of number 2, your number 2 choice, is I get to listen to those wails and high notes. Took me a second, but I recognize this actually more from Metallica's Merciful Fate medley on the Garage Days Revisited album. It's a track that I actually really like. The sad part is I think I like it more from James Hetfield's vocals than from King Diamond.
That's
he's
fair.
not.
You're not a King Diamond. It's not your sweet spot.
No. He's an acquired taste that you have acquired, and I have not.
That's
I also think Metallica sped it up just a hair, but I'm not sure about that. Is King Diamond an innovator? I mean, could there be a lot of the stuff that is today, especially like the band Ghost, without King Diamond? No. I mean, he is the giant of what upon other people stepping. So it's just that maybe his vocal stylings are not my favorite all the time.
Not for everybody. It's understandable.
So it's funny thing. He's a pioneer. I mean, there was really I don't think anybody in his lane of almost operatic again. Iron Maiden certainly had their moments, and there's some other bands that were in a similar Queensryche certainly. But he took it to the horror side of things and elevated a few notches. And it's without any pioneer, there's often somebody who comes behind them and reinterprets their work and kind of gets more acclaim for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hi Elvis. So there's this really cool series on YouTube. Hey people, check it out, called "Songs You Didn't Know Which Were Covers." Songs you didn't know were covers. Ooh. And sure enough, the cover was either really minor or not a hit at all. And the remake, but the remake is hugely popular, and the cover is like either unknown because you didn't know it was a cover. Anyway, there's very solid guitar work on this. There's very solid atmosphere on this. I mean, it really is. And I didn't know. I was unaware of it. This is the first song on that album. I mean, you were kicking things off into high gear immediately.
Yeah.
With this song. Plus necrophilia, which is always
it's always a theme.
So is this one of those ones that you found by accident? Is this one of the ones you were flipping through the vinyl going, cool? Or what?
I think we found this. I think we found the first King Diamond album, and then went back and found the Merciful Fate stuff because he had done some of this a little earlier. And I think the first time I heard this, it was probably on like an album. It was like a weird, the metal bands had problems with releases early in the 80s. So it was like a weird compilation album that had some BBC stuff that they had done at the BBC studios. And Evil was on that. It was probably the first time I heard it. But then I think this version on Melissa is the album, like the studio album that they did that has it. And at some point we found that. And this really impressive, like this for me is kind of like the key metal sound. Like if I could replicate this and like listen to it all day, I would. I could give me 1,000 songs that were like written in the 80s and sound like this. It just sort of ticks all the boxes for me with like what I love about metal. And there it's the guitar work is like really precise in here, and you can kind of tell. And there's lots of these sort of harmonized guitar solos where they've got two guys playing sort of synchronized parts. And there's some of them that there's like one moment like halfway through the song where they go into one, and it's just like one of my favorite moments in music, like one of my favorite transitions where it just sort of feels operatic is a real good word, where the guitars do that swell of something. So and definitely it's very like peculiar to King Diamond's voice. He's that heavy, falsetto voice is all over the place. The growl is here. He does like his full shtick is on display here. And I say I don't love guitar solos, but they're kind of impeccable here. They're pretty good. I mean, I don't love them generally as a rule, but these are like, if you're gonna have them, these are amazing and they're gorgeous. And the song itself, again, kind of like I'm not even sure what it's like, raising a zombie fighter from the dead. I don't know what the song's about.
It's got great lines, but it does not have a great story.
Yeah, exactly. No, and again, like so much of it is about like the attitude and the feel. And I think like the guitar, like the tone that this song takes is like just the right amount of like hard edged for me. Like it's just tough enough. I just really liked it as kind of an early example of, I'm like, ooh, that's like just sort of like one of my favorite metal songs from that era. and it's from that album with that big glowing skull on the cover,
Yep.
and so that's super cool
How
for
could you go
spooky
wrong?
season.
I see you're even wearing the King Diamond shirt today.
I am wearing my King Diamond shirt today since, I didn't, my Danzig shirt is in the cleaners.
Oh, I went for the simple vampire red myself.
Good,
so,
vampire red,
yeah.
right? Which, we'll talk about that too. That's coming.
I really like this song, the bridge, the I love to see you cry, I love to see you die. I think that's amazing. And I think that there's like a little bit of guitar solo that they kind of work in there as it's escalating.
Yeah.
It's almost
Yeah.
like they take turns. It feels like the guitars are dueling between, well, watch what I can do and look
Yeah.
what I can do.
Sort of like egging each other on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which of course is silly, but hysterical too at the same time.
Yeah, it is pretty fun. So yeah,
Yeah.
I always thought this was just a really good band. Like they had a great sound.
Yep.
And his King Diamond band was a little different. Like many of the same players, but not all the same. So it does have kind of a different chemistry and a different feel. And to your point, they go much more for kind of the theatrical horror on that side, where I feel like these are more just like kind of straight ahead sort of. This song may not make much of sense, but here it is. It's about like an Evil Dead guy.
That's right.
Like it's going to be really tough and cool, and you're going to like it. I'm like, yeah, I like that.
I do like it.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, yeah, you kind of nailed it. And yeah, I forget what was the year on that? That was 83. So yeah,
83.
like, oof, dude, yeah. I was like 11 or 12 when that came out. So I did not hear it when it came out.
I was going to say, that would have been a very strange thing to hear at 11 or 12. I'm not sure I could have enjoyed it at that point in my musical career.
Yeah, that's true.
I was more on the Weird Al tick at that age.
In the prepubescent years were different. But so let's see. So number 2 on Robert's list this week. I see I did it again. We always say this week, even though we don't record every week. I don't know.
We're like Casey Kasem's top 40. We just throw the rest of them away.
Exactly. Right?
Yeah. We're that good. We are that good.
You'll wait, and we'll do it when we do it, and you'll wait until then. Exactly. So number 2 on Robert's list is Vermillion Part 1 by Slipknot, which I found on the album Volume 3, The Subliminal Verses, which I believe was just, it sounds like a compilation. I think it's actually just the name of their third album.
That is it. Yeah, their albums are all numbered.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was, a take on the Satanic Verses.
Gotcha. So this is a true story. I have never, to my knowledge, heard Slipknot play ever.
Really?
It seems impossible, right? They've been around forever. Like they're culturally huge. Like I know what they look like. I know of them. Like, they're not unknown to me, but I don't know that I've ever actually like sat down and listened to a Slipknot song or had somebody say, hey, this is Slipknot, while something was playing. So I might have heard it and not known it, but I've never, to my knowledge, heard it. So I'm like, let's go. I'm like, because I know a lot of people are super into this band. And I gotta say, immediately I'm kind of pleasantly surprised. It's sort of, it's fun, and it's got, like, it opens with kind of like a little, what's the way to say it? I want to say it's kind of like a carnival feel, but that's a little overplaying it. But there is kind of like an off-kilter sort of kooky sound that it gets, and the vocal really surprises me because it's kind of this talky, whispery sort of like, hey, I'm telling you a secret vocal. And I like that too. This is one where, unlike the first one, which I feel is like vibe and music, like the lyrics here really important, because I think this is like kind of an not an unreliable narrator, but kind of an off-kilter narrator.
Yes.
Like, we don't like this narrator. You're in his head, and that's not necessarily an awesome place to be.
Cannot be trusted.
Yeah, and not to be trusted. So that's fun, because like, and it's one of those things that I can't even tell you like what it is about that voice that tells me that, but it's very clear for like when it starts being delivered, like within 30 seconds, it's like, oh, this guy's dangerous. Or like, this guy's like stalking this lady, or so like we're in it, like, why is he doing this? And so it becomes like a psychological kind of character study almost. I'm like, what is happening? Like, what is this guy doing? And yeah, I kind of love this as a structure, like, all the way back. Like, we can think Mr. Lovecraft, I shall never sleep soundly again when I think of, but it's kind of that, that first person narrator has always
Right.
been real powerful for me. And there's a lot of Cooper songs that I love that are that sort of strike the same vibe too, where it's clear the narrator is kind of like out of touch with reality. And part of the joy of the song, or sort of the narrative, is following along and trying to see like what you believe and what you don't, or like what they're seeing versus what may really be happening. So this one sucked me in kind of like story wise, and musically it's fun. Like musically it changes throughout. It's not super long. I think it's like 4 minutes, but I felt like it had like several parts with like really different feels. Like about halfway through it switches to kind of I don't have the language for it, so I'll say it sounds a little more like Creed, which is a crude way to say it, but it switches to like a different vocal style. It's like, there's a much more dramatic kind of vocal style that
Right.
comes in the middle that I associate more with. I'm like, ooh, I recognize that from someone, but it doesn't stay there. Like, so anyway, this seems to me like a band that knows, like, these guys know a lot about music, probably like a lot of different music, because there seems like there's a lot of influences here, and it's not just metal stuff. There's a lot of that, and they're clearly like technically good at it and want to and display that. Like there's a sick sort of solo section through here that's really technically well done as well. But yeah, it seems to me like this is a band I'm interested to hear more about, because it's I was intrigued by like the story element of the song, which I didn't really expect. I expected something more kind of energy driven, like the Lamb of God thing. So yeah, I'm curious. Is this song more? Is my reaction to that song kind of oh yeah, that's what Slipknot does, or is that, ooh, this is just off kilter for them? Or talk to me about Slipknot and Vermillion.
Slipknot. So they're a band out of Iowa. They've been
Okay.
around, I think, since the late '90s, but they had a very different sound once upon a
Okay.
time. They were kind of like the Iowa band, like Des Moines. I think had a bunch of people who just came and went through this band. They were
Okay.
constantly revolving members, whatever else.
Yeah.
This is their third album, Volume 3.
Volume 3.
Actually, that's not true. They had
Hmm.
I don't know if it was an EP. I think it might have been an EP first.
Oh, they had something before.
With a different singer and a
Okay.
different lineup, whatever. It was still Slipknot, but it was only like half the members that are in this.
And there's a lot of
One of the
people in
things,
this band. Is that
there
true?
are 9
Is it like
folks, yeah.
9?
So they have a big
Okay.
sound.
Oh,
3
now.
drummers.
Okay, gotcha. Wow.
3 drummers, a DJ,
Yeah.
a samples guy, a keyboards guy. It's a lot. It's a whole lot.
That's super unusual for a metal group.
Yes,
It's more
it
it's
is.
more regular for large hip hop groups like Public Enemy, or
Right.
you think, yeah, I know, I think of like groups like that are like entourages, or
Yeah.
even big production numbers like Pink Martini, who are like, cabaret music. But yeah, it's unusual for a metal band, and
It
interesting.
is. Yeah. And unfortunately, I think now they're kind of falling apart under the weight of that. Like
Oh,
they've had some
really?
very high profile departures.
Yeah.
I think that the business and the music now are starting to clash, and it's a whole thing. But anyway,
Oh,
I think this is their best album, Volume 3,
yeah.
Subliminal Verses. This song is, to me, is got a Halloween vibe to it, because
Yeah.
you're right, it is an off kilter, and the narrator is a creepy stalker guy.
Creepy stalker guy.
And
Good.
at the same time, you don't know if the woman he's in love with, or at least interested in,
Fixated one.
is even real or alive or dead,
Right.
or
Yeah.
yeah. Pardon me. Planned that out poorly. So yeah, it's a good song. It's dark. It's not. Most of their songs are not very story driven. They are more
Yeah.
energy
More
and
energy
more
driven. So okay, I was
right.
curious, and and it's not that you can't just do. I mean, they show this proves you can do more than one thing, right?
Absolutely.
They can do this and they can do the other.
And there is a Vermillion Part 2. It is more string driven, which is
Okay,
strange for them.
interesting.
And in that, it kind of confirms that she's dead.
Okay,
But and
Yeah.
how she died, we're not going to talk about. We don't know. It's not
we
clear.
don't know. It's
Yeah.
not clear, and
There's
it's
no
not
proof.
not included in the song. I did include in my notes that it makes me think these guys can musically do a lot, and I confess, prior to this, I just kind of wrote them off as mask wearers. So I'm sorry, but they're not. I'm like, and then I wrote, it must be hot as balls to play in those masks for hours, because I see those guys in those masks, and I'm like, they're
Yeah.
pretty form fitting. Like there can't be a lot of room to breathe in those masks, and they must wear them for hours.
Yeah. Yeah, kind of like Guar.
Yeah,
Guar,
the full costume. That's
yeah,
I don't
famously
understand
sweat like hell.
Oh yeah,
But they
Oof.
were talented musicians eventually. Guar, for a
Yeah.
long time, were not so good,
We
but they got better.
exactly.
Time went
Right.
on. We practiced.
That's right.
Um,
Yeah,
Slipknot have excellent musicianship. That's a hard word that
it
I'm
is a
trying
hard
to
word,
say on
but
this
yeah, no, you're
podcast.
right. They definitely do. I can hear it here for
Yeah.
sure. You hear it throughout
Um,
this.
so yeah, I thought it was a fine. I think of it in a Halloween sense of kind of this, probable killer,
Yeah, yeah. It's sort of
probably
it's kind of
crazy
a
killer.
stalkery sort of 80s slasher movie
Yeah.
yeah, and I know that I've heard the lead singer. What's the lead singer's name? Or is he the one who
Corey
primarily writes the
Taylor.
lyrics? I know he is also a big horror movie fan, which I am, which is
Yes.
interesting. I was thinking about this in relation to some of these songs. It's intriguing that we both like sort of different sides. Like I really like the horror movies. You really like is some of the more the new metal and stuff that I
Hmm.
didn't. So it's interesting. So I'm trying to like investigate. I'm like, what is it that Robert and I like about this and that? Like it must be very similar. But anyway, I've heard him speak many times about horror movies. He's often sort of pulled in on these documentaries to speak about the movies of particularly the 80s that I
Yeah.
grew up with, and so there's a lot here that resonates with me, and I think part of that is because this is another guy who sort of is recognizable to me. It's like, oh, I know you, like you grew up with the same pop culture I did, and are kind of fascinated by the same dark, creepy things I am.
And I think, and this is no bad reflection on him, although it sounds like it. He'll talk to anybody. I think if you put a microphone in his face,
yeah,
he'll pontificate for some time, which
pontificate
I
for
think
hours.
is very popular. I mean, it's great if you need content.
Hey, right,
So,
exactly. I'm like, hey,
yeah.
man, if you want to put a microphone in front of me, I'll talk to.
Yeah.
Just what do you want to talk
I
about?
sling no stones. Exactly.
Exactly. I'll talk, man. What do you want to talk about?
All right. So, moving to your number 3. Speaking of the business,
The
it's the
business.
horror
Horror
business by the
business.
Misfits. So, I have to say, what year was this? 1980?
79.
79.
Also,
This is
the
your
other
oldest song.
earliest track, yeah.
I have to say, I have trouble finding a lot of commentary on punk songs because punk
Got a lot to
songs
credit.
don't generally have deep rivers of meaning or anything. They're
It's
not.
true.
They're not. Deep is not what you call your average punk.
That's right.
However, even though this one felt really shallow to me, I thought, hey, it's Psycho. It's very much Psycho, but also,
Right.
we'll get into that in a second. I didn't know that upon the first couple times I listened to it, I had to go digging into the lyrics a little bit, that it's referencing the death of Sid Vicious's girlfriend, Nancy Spunger, which that's a name.
Spungen or Spunger, yeah, something like that. Yeah, that is. We'll keep going. No, I'm curious to hear what else you found.
So it's deeper than I thought it was, but
Yes.
Glenn Danzig threatening me that he'll stick a knife in me if I go with him into the bathroom. 100% believable. 100%.
I buy that. Yeah.
Would not go into the bathroom with him.
No.
Would seek another way to go to the bathroom.
Exactly. Why I would want to go into the bathroom with Glenn Danzig to start with, a little unclear.
But if you're going to threaten me, I'm going to go someplace far away and use that bathroom.
That's right. Yeah. No, you don't have to tell me twice, Glenn.
So this reminded me of that famous fight with Danzig where he fought somebody's bodyguard and famously did not go well.
Yes.
But he still scares me, and he's still threatening, and I regard his warnings as legitimate and alarming at all times.
Fair.
So the Misfits, I have a very storied knowledge of them. I remember Misfits shirts were huge in the 80s, much more so than their music was.
Exactly.
Much more so. People just thought, hey, this is a cool band. And then they put the album on, they're like, this was recorded in a toilet somewhere.
At some point, I think they started selling at Target, and that's when it kind of went off the rails.
They were iconic, not for what they sounded like, but what they looked like, how they acted, or whatever else.
Yeah, so, very much a mood and a look, wasn't it?
Yeah,
the devil lock.
They call that
the
devil lock.
The devil lock, the one like where they took all their hair down into a point in front of their face.
Right,
it was a really dumb look.
It was cool. No, it wasn't.
It was. I mean, yeah, it was
singular.
Ostensibly, it was cool in the '80s when we first.
No,
no, we don't. Yeah, somebody wore it because they thought it was cool. Yeah, we can neither confirm nor deny the coolness of this hairstyle.
So, were you a Misfits fan in the 80s?
I kind of was.
Okay.
And yeah, the Misfits were one of the first like punk band. We want to call it. Some people probably take umbrage calling the Misfits a punk band, but that's okay. They were one of the
I call
first
them a punk band.
I think they are a punk band. They're yeah. I think they're a punk band. And
If Glenn Danzig has a problem with that,
he
don't come see me.
right. No, I think Glenn Danzig would call it a punk band, and he'd probably want
Yeah.
to punch anybody who said otherwise. Then that may go one of two ways. But anyway, so I did. I don't know. The Misfits were one of those like weird bands I found through like some third party friend, like a friend of a friend had this weird music. And I just remember it was very 80s because I got it probably like on a cassette that was like third generation, so it was crappy quality anyway.
Yes.
And the Misfits quality, they're not known for their sound quality. Many of these recordings were made poorly or they have limitations of the recording environment that they were made in.
They were
But yeah,
taped on one of those little flat cassette things in the back of a room
right.
far away.
Right, with like five guys like crowded around it and jamming at super high volumes.
Right.
But yeah, this was horror business is kind of there's a strong theory that it is about the death of Nancy, the Sid and Nancy of Nancy of Sid and Nancy Spungen or Spunger or whatever her last name was. But yeah, there was the band knew Sid Vicious, and like so around the time this happened, and so the song came after that, and I think that's why people think maybe it has something to do with this. And she was stabbed in the bathroom. The song also, there's another theory that it's just maybe it's about Psycho, the movie Psycho, because she's driving at night,
Right.
to get stabbed in the bathroom. So, but that's to your point, like it's not a tight narrative in any way, shape, or form. But it's and I think it kind of rides the edge for me. Like part of it is energy, like of these Misfit songs is always kind of like the slapdash ramshackle energy that they get, which is really kind of like it's sort of unique. And he has trouble catching it later, like he gets other stuff later, but this is sort of unique to the Misfits. And it has like enough of a story in this one to feel sinister without me needing to be able to fill it in. Like you said, it's like I don't want to go in the bathroom with Glenn Danzig, he's going to put a knife in me, and I believe it. But I don't know like why we're driving late at night. I don't really know what the horror business is. So it's one of those fun songs where depending on what I'm feeling, I can kind of plug the specifics in around Glenn's threatening demeanor and it works pretty well for me. It sounds kind of sinister without me being able to really explain what's going on. It's like I feel like we're in danger here, but I don't know why. I don't really understand what's going on. So I've always liked that it makes me feel, I think, narratively a little unmoored, but still like kind of creepy, maybe like a dream that you have where it's like, I know I'm afraid, but I'm not 100% sure why.
How did we get here?
Exactly. Yes. Right. Yeah. The route from A to B is unknown. Here it's kind of creepy. So
indeed.
Yeah. And yeah, this Glenn, 79, he was writing these songs and recording them, and they were releasing them. Like, I don't even know. I tried to find out what album this was on, and I think he like released it as an EP on his own label initially, and then it got repackaged, a zillion
many times
after that. Yeah. Part of the trouble with the Misfits is like, how many Misfits albums are there? I'm like, well, take a knee, gang. Like they've just been repackaged.
This is a story.
And carved up. Exactly. So yeah, just an early one for me that I kind of remember focusing on sort of the story element of and being kind of creeped out. So I thought for spooky season it was nice to have one that tripped my horror movie nerve a little bit.
Did this one have lyrics in the liner notes?
None of these had lyrics.
I didn't think
when
so.
I was listening to them as a kid, when I was listening to them in the 80s, like I couldn't find lyrics for any of them now. And now you can find them for the most part. Although even then there's some arguments like there was Metallica's like, Glenn didn't really know what the words for Green Hell were when we covered it. We asked him, and he said he thought they were this, and so we sang that, but we don't really think that's what he's saying. So there was even his writing, was not like preserved. So it's interesting. I do think that like if you go out and listen to them now, you can find lyrics for all of them, which are generally not great and often pretty offensive, but
Yeah.
still, you can find them now. But back then, like, I don't know what the hell I thought they were singing. A lot of this one's pretty clear. Like, you
Right.
can at least kind of make out most of what he's saying, but that's not true for a lot of them.
Right.
Kind of like,
Yeah.
you do the yeah.
He
I
says it
don't know what.
fast.
Yeah, exactly. I'm saying something that
Polysyllabic and
sounds
quick. Yeah.
exactly. So I'm gonna rush through it and say it real fast.
Well, I got to keep up with the drums.
Exactly.
Otherwise
Right?
it could be off.
Yeah. And what I put in my notes, like many of my favorite Misfits songs, this one seems violent and incoherent, and somehow that's a
Yes.
feature rather than a bug. Like, I don't know why, but that's part of what I like about it. It's sort of violent and incoherent, and the music somehow paired with that
Makes it work. Yeah.
makes it work. Yeah, yeah.
Very nice.
Glenn. We'll talk about Glenn again.
We
Let's
will.
talk about Rob's number 3 on the list is Dragula by Rob Zombie from the album Hellbilly Deluxe 1998. Zombie has been part of our world for a very long time. I forget that sometimes. I mean, it makes perfect sense once I remember it. I'm like, oh yeah, he's been on the radar for a long time. So so I don't know how to stress this, but there's nothing in the other 9, nay 11 songs we're going to talk about today that sounds like this. There's
Yeah.
nothing on the list that sounds anything like this. And it hits a vibe, and I don't know how Zombie does it, but I like his stuff, and he manages to somehow make it everything sounds like it's really sinister and it's extremely danceable.
Yeah. At the same
Like,
time.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, it's really sinister, and it's not necessarily the kind of music you would want to dance to, but you kind of want to dance to it. And that's exactly what I feel here, man. I feel like the production here is super tight. And yeah, I always love it when I hear it. It's inspired by like some really kooky kind of dumb things. Like, this is inspired by Rob Zombie's love of the monsters, like in Dragula was Grandpa's dragster.
Yep.
And so, but it's got and the lyrics are ludicrous and I don't think make any
Completely
sense.
nonsense.
It's
Yes.
totally nonsense just to rhyme, right? But
Yeah.
it's got that amazing chorus. What is it? Dig through the ditches and burn through the witches and ride my
Slam in
Dragula,
the back
slam in
of
the
my
back of my
Dragula.
Dragula. I mean, it's just amazing. So yeah, this is one of those things. It's 100% for me. It's 100% style over substance, and I love every minute of it. This is like if you're gonna do style over substance, I'll take Zombies style over substance any day. Like,
Yeah.
because I just love like this. Like, he hits a unique kind of style. It's got like he loves a lot of the same kooky horror movie stuff that I do, but he's over the top with it in ways that wouldn't spawn from my mind but look good on him. So I'm like, that's pretty cool. I said it's like evil party music, and I feel like that's a niche
Yeah.
that until this moment, like, there was nobody really to fill. Like, house music kind of tried, but it's a different vibe, and I feel like this just like hits a real like sweet spot. It's somewhere between like metal and dance music, and that's not generally okay for metal people to like that kind of music. And
Right.
I think Rob Zombie figured out the way to navigate that. Like, this is how, and that's why a lot of Rob Zombie songs played at strip clubs because they're good dance numbers. They're songs that are built for they've got a
Yeah.
beat and they're built like that. So yeah, I think Rob Zombie is one of those guys. Like, I don't actively seek him out or even consider myself a Rob Zombie fan, but every time I hear them, man, I turn them up. They're
Yeah.
good. Like, I don't seek them out, but I'm always very happy to find them. And this is just a blast. Like, I must have listened to this 10 times if I listened to it once. It's so much fun to listen to. The video is ridiculous and awesome too. You should totally watch that with him in his ridiculous makeup, driving in his Dragula. Yeah, I don't know. I love this, and I feel like it's tuned to all my weird little horror and music predilections. So tell us about why you love this, Rob.
This is my monster mash.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just that kind of
Yeah.
weird. Makes no real sense if you give it any consideration,
No.
but it is perfect for the season. It's perfect for just it is a It's not even spooky. It's just macabre.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's spooky
and you're right.
adjacent.
It's weirdly danceable.
It's very dance. Like it makes me want to move when I hear it, and I'm not a man who is easily moved.
Not given to dance.
Exactly, not right.
But I was a fan of White Zombie. I'm not like a huge mega fan by any stretch, but again, like you, I enjoy his work. I can listen to it and go, "This is good stuff. This is well constructed." I do find his albums maybe a little bit samey. He doesn't really have a broad range, but his range, he found his niche. He fits well
and he's
into
thumping it. Right, exactly. Right, he's working the bass,
getting a lot of mileage out of what he's got. So
exactly.
And I am not a huge horror fan, as we've talked about before.
We know,
but I totally, he's sort of that 50s. You're right, the Munsters, Addams Family, schlock over shock.
Yeah.
So I enjoy that. I find this again. If this comes on the radio, not that I listen to the radio very often,
but
this is definitely a turn it up.
Not that they would play this on the radio, but if they did, if those two events happened, we would turn it on
simultaneously, an unlikely happenstance.
Well, I will say controversially, and you can email us if you don't like this, but I think House of a Thousand Corpses is the best Rob Zombie horror movie. He's made a lot of horror movies, and I think they're all worth a watch, except maybe those Halloween remakes. So you can come at me if you don't. Those
How many has he made? I don't even know.
He's made a lot. So he's made House of a Thousand Corpses. He made The Devil's Rejects. He made there was one other in there I'm forgetting. He made.
I know he did a Monsters movie.
He did a Monsters movie. It was not well received. He did The Lords of Salem, which was pretty fun. He did and he did Halloween. He did Halloween 2. He did both. He did like a retelling of Halloween and a remake of Halloween 2 that were kind of praised. They were reimaginings. I suppose if you're not as tightly coded to those originals as I am, you may enjoy the Rob Zombie. I suspect my resistance to them was they were too far away from the source material that I love. But yeah, House of a Thousand Corpses struck me as his first one, very kind of over the top and a little schlocky, and another case I think where it's way more style than substance, but I absolutely love it. Like it's just fun to watch and fun to look at. It's like, it's candy. I love it. It's not nutritional, but that's okay. Everything doesn't have to be.
Right. I actually thought about getting the pot of Halloween candy to join us for this episode. I did not.
Well, that's okay.
The pot of Halloween candy did not take my calls.
That's right. And I saw somebody argue that if you buy a bag of Halloween candy at the beginning of October, none of that is for trick-or-treaters. No. Like, that's exactly true. I bought a bag and no trick-or-treaters are getting any of that.
Now I wish I had some candy. Damn it.
Damn it. All right. Yeah. Moving on.
All right. So your song 4, I think I had this in the right order because I had a mix-up in the middle, is Long Way Back from Hell by Danzig.
Yes, sir.
I think so. Yep.
I think so. Okay. Another back-to-back Danzigs for you.
Yeah, that's right. We got the Danzig double feature.
It's quite a few years later, right? This is like, what, 90, 91, something like that?
Something in that realm, yeah. After he was working with Rick Rubin, I think. Yeah. Was on both the first and the second album, right?
The second album with Rubin here.
Yeah. This is a song I actually know really well because I listened to the first couple of Danzig albums semi-regularly. Yeah. Had some friends in high school because I was still in high school when this came out. Yeah. Who were hugely into him. I think we had a lot of discussions back then about whether or not he was satanic because that was a big deal when I was in high school. Like it was this alluring way to people. Being satanic was sort of code for cool somehow. I don't know.
Right. A different kind of cool, but absolutely.
To me, even now and then, it was like, in the immortal words of Bart Simpson, church, cult, church, so we get bored someplace different on Sundays.
That's right, exactly.
But I do love a good song about hell, as aforementioned.
Of course.
This one definitely delivers. It's got that ominous feel. It's got that sultry, evil Elvis vocal style that he's so good at.
Absolutely.
He's got that threatening of, you can't handle this. I mean, that's always kind of like he's in his zone.
The mother, tell your children not to walk my way kind of vibe.
Exactly. You want to see hell?
Exactly.
I love that it references New Orleans because that is a shorthand code for voodoo, black magic.
Exactly right. All sorts of sinister stuff.
Yeah. I've never visited New Orleans, but I suspect I'd be disappointed to come there with these thoughts and find out that it's just another, city. It would. My references are wrong for what New Orleans really looks like.
Not nearly as horrific as you expected.
Exact, and that's sad. I can't decide if this song, if he's asking us to help him kill somebody, if he's chiding us for not being able to come kill somebody, if we're not capable of killing that person. Like, he's sort of bragging he's better at murder than we are. Glenn,
Right.
you're going to win this round.
Exactly.
Right.
Right.
I'm gonna.
Right.
You get the point. All right.
I cede that one to you, Glenn.
Yeah.
you get that. Yeah, I think I agree with all that. Yeah, I think I heard it like when it came out. These first two Danzig albums, this I think is the best Danzig album. It's the second produced by Ruben, and I feel like they kind of hit their sweet spot here.
Probably.
I feel like the first one's really good, but this
Twist
second
of Cain
one
is hard
Twist
to
of
miss.
Cain. Oh, it's amazing. Oh no, the first one great, but man, this in particular like pushes. I think this is an example of Ruben kind of pushing Danzig to do sort of the max of what that band can do. Like the guitar work on here is crazy good. Yeah. Again, like one where like I'm not usually like up on a lot of like slick guitar play, but man, this is like really atmospheric. It really sets the mood, and it kind of gets that slinky sort of New Orleans evil vibe,
right?
In like just immediately like takes you there. And his vocal, again, sort of nonsense. I have no idea what this song is about, but it's very dark. Yeah, he's clearly either like goading us for not willing to do the crazy killing thing he's doing, or he's just really talking about the crazy killing thing he's willing to do.
Right.
I don't know. but yeah, there's definitely some killing that needs done, and Glenn wants you to help. But yeah, I just love the again the kind of the production here, kind of like Evil. This is another one where I'm like, man, this was another moment where I'm like, metal really kind of shined for me here, like with Ruben producing and Danzig kind of far enough away from that Misfits stuff to do something that sounds really different. Like this doesn't sound anything like horror that tune before. It's totally different. So I just really loved like the sound of this, and I think if you pick up that album, it's the first song on that second album, and it's just like a great introduction to the sound of the whole album. I feel like it really kind of takes you in. And we've talked before, it's sometimes hard to talk about single songs instead of whole albums as an experience, and I do feel like this is one. I think this is the second song I've put on a list off of this album.
Oh,
I think maybe way back in the first one.
She Rides, maybe.
Yeah, or there was another one we did. And I just think every song on this album is pretty great for some reason. And I feel like this is a cool way to sort of see like all the different things in Danzig's toolbox. It's like, it's not that he wouldn't do some of them better later or in other places, but this is like a really solid example of all the cool things that band could do. And I think this is just a great example next to that Misfits song too, because they're so different, and I love them both for like different reasons.
Very different reasons.
Very different reasons. And similarly, again, like we've said, like the narrative is in broad brush strokes, but not specific, and that's okay in this case. I feel like it works as well as anything. Like a really detailed story might detract from how cool I'm being battered around by this music, right, or that guitar that's taken me. So it's taken me on a journey, but I don't have to get it all through the lyrics.
I do think in general the spooky season songs that we've gone for are mood over storytelling. I don't think we've gone for the deeper stories, because the whole season is kind of its own story, its own kind of feeling.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I guess that's true. I mean, if you say what is Halloween, is more of a feeling than a narrative. I mean, you just say kids come around and get candy, but that's not really the story, is it?
No.
Right, it's not really the
story is there's no candy left, kid. Go away.
That's right, we ate all the candy. Go away.
Time for the trick. Uh-oh.
Exactly, right? Get ready. Comes the toilet paper. All right, so Danzig again, man. We're just okay. Now I got number 4 on Robert's list. This is Attack of the Dead Men by Sabaton. I think, is that how you say their name? Sabaton? Is that how you say that? Like a French Sabaton.
No, they're Swedish, in fact.
Swedish. Oh yeah, it's and that's like a metal boot.
It sounds weird.
Yeah, it does, right?
All they have up there is polar bears and metal. I'm pretty sure. Like New
right.
Orleans, I'm going to visit someday and be like,
Yeah.
totally wrong.
I
Totally
had
wrong.
that
Nope.
moment where I'm like, Sabbath, this was, and like they got this awesome logo that looks like I should have drawn it like on my folder in high school. And really, like they look like there's something
Yes.
about this band that sort of harkens like old school, like
Yeah.
Man of War, or like one of those bands from the '80s, like big and bombastic. I got halfway through listening to this track the first time. I paused it. I stood up. I walked away and verbally said, "What is happening right now? I have no idea what's happening right now." Eventually I collected myself and went back. Yeah, I really love this song. This song is cool in so many ways. I have trouble talking about it, but it's it's a narrative of, and this is apparently something this band does. It's a narrative, like a battlefield sort of narrative, like a battlefield story. I think often, as I understand it, their songs are completely historical, and this one seems to have like kind of a supernatural bent in that the dead men are rising and attacking. But I don't know. It could also be, I don't know, some weird World War One story. I don't know, but it's fascinating and it's really well done. In that, what we've talked about with his other music, like it's so energy driven and a lot of it is vibe driven. It's often hard to, I think, keep that and communicate like a real detailed story, but this does. It's got like charges and counter charges. Like, it's super detailed in what's happening, and musically, because it's kind of easy to lose track of, I confess, because the narrative, because I'm so tied up in the words and like marching along with the words, and it's just a lot of fun. It reminded me, if I'm like, musically, I guess it's got kind of like almost like a hard rock or early metal
Right.
instrumentation. It's a lot
Yeah.
lighter than a lot of the more modern stuff. So actually, when I first heard it too, I've learned more about the band because I thought maybe they've been around since the '80s and I just missed it. Right. But I'm
Yeah.
like, no, it's interesting that they're a more modern band with that sound. And, in some moments, they kind of reminded me of maybe like a more modernly produced Iron Maiden, like an interest in the same kind of themes
Yeah.
and musically even more like energy and kind of power in the music. Yeah, I don't know. It feels very uplifting and it's very kind of like, hey, let's go sort of music when I hear
Yeah.
it. So yeah, I was fascinated. And apparently they have a bunch of stuff. So anyway, I was just really interested that this is a band that's apparently like found a way to make these like whole albums about like military history
Right.
in this way. And
And be
yeah,
cool.
and be
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, this was a lot of fun. Like it's not, it goes really fast. Like it essentially, I think, it kind of tells the story twice, but sort of a World War One story of this battle that seems to be going well, and then the dead guys get up, and obviously it goes poorly when the dead guys get up. But yeah, so I didn't know anything about this band, but I really like this tune. It was a lot of fun, and I'm curious. It's off of their album called The Great War, I think,
Yes.
and that's relatively recent, right? 2019. This is actually
Yep.
the most recent thing on Robert's list
Yeah.
this time. So yeah, Attack of the Dead Men. I had a great time with this song, and I was kind of pleasantly surprised by it. Just given the other stuff on the list and like how we've talked about, like it hasn't been like, it's been okay for it to not be so narratively driven, but this
Right.
one I'm like, ooh, these guys
This
figured
one
out a
has a
way to
story.
do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they kind of figured out a way to do both, which is cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Sabaton, I think I started listening to them about 6 years ago. Right before this album came out, I think.
Yeah.
They're kind of power metal, but power metal generally is like soaring and anthems and mostly
Yeah.
fantasy stuff. They tend
Right.
to be more sword and sorcery, and Sabaton is not sword and sorcery. They're very historical. Even this song with the Dead Men.
Yes.
So the story is, as I understand it, this is a German attack on a Russian fort called Oswick. I may be
Okay.
completely
Yeah.
mispronouncing
And that's
that.
in the song.
It is.
The name
Yep.
of that place. Yeah.
They first bombed it with chlorine gas, which now is
Yeah.
outlawed. But during
Yes,
World War
exactly.
One, they were not so particular.
Chemical agents, A-OK.
Yeah. Ugh.
Yeah.
So what literally happened was the Germans bombed it with chlorine gas, thought they were going to find a freshly dead group of Russians, and the Russians came pouring out with
Oh, wow.
basically half mummified because they've tried to cover themselves with cloth and stuff.
Yeah.
And the dead men references, they literally are dying on their feet because the chlorine gas is fatal,
Killing them.
even though they hasn't kicked in
Hasn't
yet,
killed them yet.
completely killed them.
Wow.
So they are, and the story goes, they're like literally spitting out pieces of their own lungs. Horrific. Yeah.
It's
Your face
grisly.
is not wrong.
Yeah.
But they fought the Germans, and the Germans said, "You know what? We'll go someplace else because this is not what we thought. We did not expect the Russians to put up a fight. We thought they'd be dead."
That's right. It's like I didn't want to have to kill them
over the
again.
hill.
Right, exactly. Yeah, well, that makes sense because I wondered. There's a lot. I watched one of the videos too that talks of some and has some context about the history and the use of chlorine, the use of chemical weapons, particularly broadly in World War One. Yeah, very interesting. Like, I don't think I don't normally think about coming to music for my history, but it's nice to be able to get it there. It's nice.
It's really funny. This album, there's 3 different versions of it. There's like the bass version. There's a historical version that literally has like some narration between songs by a historian that talks about what the history of that song is, what the moment that they're going over. Like there's, I believe there's an Arnheim. There's the Great War kind of overture.
Yeah,
just the whole thing. It's really something.
That's awesome.
They're super cool, and they have a really. It's surprising that their sound is softer. Is not the right word, but it is. You're right. It's more hard rock than heavy metal.
Right.
There's a lot of keyboards, which is it's kind of funny because they don't. If you ever see their videos, you never see a keyboard. So I'm pretty sure
keyboard player.
The singer plays keyboards, in the studio, and they have a guy off stage hiding somewhere,
playing it.
Because there's a lot of keyboard in this and some of their other songs as well. They've got songs about World War II, and what's funny too is they never take sides. Like they have songs that are not pro-German, but they're German focused, and they've got songs that are Russian focused and U.S. and British. They have a really cool song about one of the American heroes of
it's around the tip of my tongue.
Yeah. Heck.
Some important American guy.
Yes, but it's a cool song about him being a member of the Airborne, and he jumps out the plane and like single-handedly captures a fortress of like 200 Germans because they think he's the head of a whole force.
Yeah,
and it's like
a bunch of guys behind him.
It's all good.
just me.
And he captures this big, concentration of Germans, and they're like, we surrendered to one guy. All right.
Terrible. It's going to look bad on the report.
Yeah, that's right.
Sarge ain't going to like that.
Hopfooler.
Now, here's an interesting thing I read, that in 2022, Sabaton received the Public Educator Award from the Swedish Skeptics Association for the historical information which they publish on their homepage and through one of their YouTube channels. Now, apparently someone involved with the band had said something kind of sketchy about Ukraine or Russia, so they investigated it, and they came back and said, no, they keep the award. They did really good work letting people know. And the guy came back and said, sorry, I was just saying something about where we were in, but anyway, it was interesting. I'm like, that's really cool to get that kind of recognition in a field. I notice that, it sometimes happens in gaming. You're like, oh, somebody got something cool for like a gaming supplement that's kind of out of the blue. And this struck me the same. I'm like, that's cool that a band would get recognized for like putting historical information out into the world, particularly at a time when lots of bad information is getting out into the world instead.
Metal and education don't generally go hand in hand. That's not normally something you think of.
Another metal band you can think of that's recently won an Educator Award?
Wow, do you have information on this?
I don't. No, I don't. I don't.
I feel like there's a quiz.
No, I think you're exactly right. I don't think there is. I was surprised to find this one, enough so that I would remark on it.
So one thing too is this Asoek is like huge in Russia. This is really? One of the kind of pivotal moments of this is early days of Russia, early days of the communist. Or actually, I guess it's the end of the Tsarist period. The communists hadn't taken over yet.
Okay, the end. Yeah. So like when they're
they celebrate that force of resistance against the German onslaught as a really important thing. It's kind of their Star Spangled Banner-y type situation.
So like that we stood strong.
Our men did not give up even while dying on their feet.
Strong like Russian bear.
That's right. So, the more you
Nice.
know,
No,
the more you
yeah.
grow.
That's a fun band I didn't know of. And honestly, like when I heard that, I'm like, man, how did I miss these guys in the 80s?
Yeah, no.
But yeah, I'm like, oh man, I would love these guys. I would have blasted these guys in my Duster. 16.
You still can. You know what?
I
You can
can, right?
relive.
It's not the
Yeah.
same in the Prius.
No.
Blasting
Means a little
anything.
something different.
It does. Yeah, it's a little different. All right, so let's see.
Your song number 5, which would be
number
our last
5
one, but
would be
not
our last.
now.
Not
No.
today. No.
We are breaking all the rules
That's
here
right.
in the spooky season.
Right.
So this one, you took a hard right turn here.
I did.
With King's Highway by Joe Henry. So, this has been a pretty heavy metal, and I don't mean that in the... Well,
I understand. It's been metal heavy.
We've been, metal and Halloween have a strong... It's like they're peanut butter and chocolate together.
That's right. Yeah, they're interested in the same things, right?
Yes, exactly. There's a little bit of tongue-in-cheekness. That's a word. Look it up.
Absolutely.
But now you bring us something that is not metal, but is truly dark. It really stands alone from the rest of the song. It's sneaky, and it creeps up on you how dark it is.
Yeah.
But a quick sidebar. So for whatever reason, this song is not on Amazon Music, which is where I consume most of my.
Oh,
music.
interesting.
Yeah, I don't know why this album could not be found. I have a pretty extensive Echo setup, which is kind of cool.
That's
I can
weird.
just yell out things and they suddenly start playing. I find that to be a fascinating way to live.
Interesting.
So I had to catch this on YouTube, and the video completely spoils the song. The video.
Oh yeah, did you see the live video where he explains it before he? Yeah.
Oh no.
There is a live video
where
he tells the story before he sings the song. But I'm sorry to interrupt you. Please.
No, it's all good. He spends a lot of time with the body in the video.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay, I know the one. Yeah. The official music video.
I would not recommend watching the video until you hear the song first, if you're following along home. But this song is basically, kind of killed a man just to watch him die. That's kind of the summation of this guy who's perfectly normal, perfectly fine, not the sort of person to do the sort of thing, except I just did. I just went in and I killed him, and this act of intimate, it sounds like strangulation. It doesn't really say one way or the other. But we held him close until he stopped moving.
You held him, yeah.
Yeah. So Joe Henry, I've heard him before, but I don't know. You haven't featured any of his songs previously, have you?
He was on our previous list, actually.
Well, then that might
song,
be why.
the one about Willie Mays being in the Home Depot, was Joe Henry. So this, it's quite all right. So I doubled down on you a lot here with folks.
A little bit.
That we had, yeah. So it's a fascinating song, and to your point, like it doesn't, it sort of sneaks up on you. It's definitely the least metal song on this list, and in some ways the most disturbing. It has more probably in common with the narrator of Vermillion than anything else, because it's very much but this one's quite different, whereas Vermillion sort of invites you into kind of the twisted thinking of the person. King's Highway is very sedate. King's Highway is horrifying because he doesn't care. He's not worked up about it. He's not invested. It's a very cool and kind of clinical discussion of this murder. Like, he says, what's the line? He was just because he was passing through this town, and only because he looked about right. Like that was the whole reason, and he stopped when I flagged him down. That was that was it. It's like why he killed this guy, and he looked about right, like the kind of guy I wanted to kill, and he stopped for me, so I killed him. And it's a very and so it's another kind of character study, and it is pretty interesting. Like you do get a little insight into this character who is pretty dark and kind of bleak and sort of not very deep either. You get the sense, that there's something kind of empty and broken about this character. The other thing I really like about it is I have no idea this happens. It could be strikes me like King's Highway makes me think kind of like Highwayman, like horse, like I don't know, but 1800s. But there's nothing about the song that means it couldn't have been yesterday, or it couldn't have been a more modern time. It's real sort of divorced from its setting, and just
Right.
sort of tells this tight little story inside the mind of this guy. And yeah, and I just love the refrain. I might just change my mind. Sometimes you can never tell.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, the idea that like it's if I chose to do this randomly, I might decide not to do it just as randomly. And then just the horror of that, the idea that that's like a super dangerous person who can decide on a dime. Like
Yeah.
that guy, I'm going to kill that guy or
That man
not.
needs some killing. Right.
Yeah,
There's no passion. There's no hot
right.
bloodedness. It's very, yep, why
Yeah.
not?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, kind of a cool and detached killer, which for me is a lot harder to deal with than a knife
Yeah.
wielding maniac. Or
Right.
at least
You
I
see him coming.
understand the knife wielding maniac in some sense. He's just really angry about something.
His
This
sports team
guy.
could have lost or something. We've all been there.
Exactly. Right.
Right.
Precisely. We've all had bad days.
They say they're going to serve breakfast until 9 a.m., but they run out of
That's
stuff.
right.
Yeah.
Continental breakfast, my ass. Okay. So number 5 on Robert's
That was a
list.
lovely segue, I have to say.
Thank you. Yes. You know me, I am the segue master.
That's true.
Is
Off the
Bela
cliff.
Lugosi's Dead by Bauhaus. This is
Ah.
the other track that was from 1979 on our list. I actually had no idea it was this early. So that
No,
was
me
kind
either.
of a fascinating revelation to me. And Bauhaus is another one of those bands that has like a stupid discography. So this appeared on some EP when they did it. But it's fascinating because I know more of this song. Like it's kind of a cultural icon for the goth
Yeah.
movement, and sort of spawned that whole movement, I think, in a lot of ways. But so it's another one, kind of like Slipknot, that I admittedly knew of, but I don't know that I've ever actually heard it. Or
Huh.
I've heard it, I think, in movies or bits and pieces, in things. I think they redid part of it for the David Bowie vampire movie, The Hunger, maybe. And so I think I've heard bits and pieces of it, but I never sat down and just listened to it like I did
For
here.
the day and a half it takes to
And
play it.
it is like
Yeah.
11:09 or 11,
Yeah.
depending on which version you find. It's really long. And it was super experimental. It's interesting. Like you should, if you've never heard it, you should listen to it. There's certainly lots to recommend it, but it's really interesting as kind of like the point in time that it happened. Cause I guess it was part of like, they were a relatively new band. They just kind of gotten together and were trying to figure out what they were going to sound like.
Right.
And so they did like this big 6-hour jam session where they played through and tried to work out all this material. And this is one of the things that came out of it. And they're like, we're not really sure what this is, but it's really cool and we
Yeah.
like it. And so and it's weird. It's super sparse and it's more percussive than you would think. Like a lot of the sounds that are in it are sort of percussive sounds, and the guitar work has like these great sort of like weird chords with some strings left open, so they're really big and resonant. So it's just like it really drips mood. Which I think is, like clearly they sort of lean into here. I think the vocals start like 3 minutes into it. You gotta
Yeah.
wait like
It's
3
got a
minutes
long
to
intro.
get any vocals. I got like a really long intro. And it's, as I understand it, like sort of the beginning of goth music. Like this was sort of where people think, well, there's something really cool and kind of dark here. And it sort of is. Like there is something kind of sinister about like just the arrangement of it. And I don't know whether it's like the kind of ominous sort of tone. There's almost like a pad there, or like a dark cloud that kind of lays over it. And the guy's voice is great. I mean, he's just basically saying Bela Lugosi's dead, or I mean, there may be some other stuff said, but this is another one where I feel like the lyrics aren't that important. They're more
Yeah.
about kind of building the mood around, yeah, just around the spooky season. And I feel like they do a great job of that. Like they're vague enough and weird, and we know Bela Lugosi is Dracula, and we don't know anything else about him probably, but we know he's dead, and that sounds bad. So yeah, I just really liked it. It's kind of a wild ride. It doesn't strike me as the kind of thing that you and I are probably going to sit down and listen to a whole lot end to end. But yeah, I'm glad I heard it, and I'm really curious like where you first heard it, or if it's loomed large for you, or was it for you more like a cultural thing that you knew, or have you known the actual song since the 80s?
So Bauhaus is one of those bands that a lot of the bands I liked, kind of the horror metal, not even horror, but the
Yeah.
dark metal stuff.
Yeah.
This was one of their influences, and I went, well, let's
Go
pull the
back.
string
Right.
backward and see
Yeah.
where it goes.
Exactly.
So I was not a goth ever in life.
Yeah.
I
Me
do
neither.
like some gothic music, but
Sure.
you
Me
know,
too.
this was definitely before my time. 78 again.
Yeah.
Or 79. I was 5 years old.
Right.
I'm still
Pretty
dressed
old.
all in black, but that was a mom thing. That was not really
That's
my
right.
choice
It
at that
wasn't
point.
had less to do with Bela Lugosi.
Yes, right. But it sounds to me like this was recorded in some like bombed out church, around midnight. It is so atmospheric. It is so
Super atmospheric.
just, you can feel the darkness come
Yeah.
over you. It sounds so weird, but it does. It just has
It
that
does.
kind of like, you can't. This is not something that they could play at an open air festival during the day.
No.
This has to be in a dark theater with some very minimal spotlights, maybe some candles. I don't know, but there's only certain times you can play this. Like, you would not blast this on your radio flying down the highway. Completely
No,
inappropriate.
yeah, it's there's something kind of intimate about it, right? It's weird.
Yes.
It does seem like it's something that I would much rather listen to in like a small dark place with candles. Yeah, that's kind of
Yeah.
perfect. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, there's something about it. And I wonder if that's kind of why it was so integral to that goth movement, because it does kind of inspire sort of that,
Yes.
kind of a whole movement kind of built out of
I
that
gotta
feeling,
dye my
right?
hair now. I'll
Yeah.
be back. Yeah.
That's right. We'll get to that one in a minute too. They're talking about the hair dye. But
Yes.
yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
It is such a. There's nothing else like that song
Yeah.
that I'm aware of. I mean, even later goth stuff didn't really touch, because it is. You're right. It's so experimental, and it's so like it's this noodling, but noodling for a purpose, sort of, kind of. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's
And
good
I mean,
stuff.
it's clearly, it strikes me as like experimental, but not to the point where, some of that experimental stuff is also difficult to listen to. And this is not. I mean, it's very, it takes you on a ride. Yeah, if you are patient with it, it unspools and it's worth the ride, I think. But yeah, it's definitely a different vibe. And
Yeah.
it's one of those ones where I'm like, yeah, I'd have to kind of curate the experience where I'm going to listen to this. But you're right.
Turn the
It
lights off.
figures. Yeah, turn
Yeah.
the lights off. Right, exactly. Put some incense on. Light my clove cigarette. And but yeah, I think it's interesting that you say that, because I remember hearing a lot of bands that I like to mention the Bauhaus or this song in
Yeah.
particular as kind of like an inspiration. So it strikes me as one of those like weird signposts in the ground where somebody
Yeah.
like, we made this weird thing. We're not even 100% sure what it is. Like one of those moments where somebody just like stumbles on something and then a
Yeah.
lot of people come along and go, that's really cool. We're going to intentionally do more of that. And you get goth, which is, yeah.
Yeah.
I've never been a goth myself, but I've been goth adjacent, I guess. Or,
Right.
I like
Yeah.
goth things, or
They're harmless
I'm not.
enough.
I have no. Yeah, I have no hard feelings about the goth community. They're okay with me, and I'm just not a goth music guy necessarily, or I don't have. Yeah. Don't have
Yeah.
I can't put things in my eye because I'm nervous about touching my eyes, so I can't do the contacts. Maybe the fangs. I maybe do the fangs, but I don't know.
Yeah.
The beard, it's hard to see him anyway, so it doesn't. Bauhaus. Good. Yeah, I really like that. That was. I'm glad
Yeah.
you put a couple things on this list where I'm like, man, I'm just well overdue to know about these. I know of them, like, so this and Slipknot, I was quite happy to have on the list. I feel like I'm a more broadly rounded human being.
Before we get into song 6, I do want to talk about how challenging it was to pick. Well, should only
Yeah.
be 5 songs, but we went
Right.
bonus. I came up with this. I don't know if you were thinking the same thing as I was, but I'm like, we need to do something Halloween related. We don't generally
Yes.
go for heavy theming here because we're
Right.
not that kind of person, individually or collectively.
That's
Theme is something we're aware of, and sometimes we touch on it, but mostly we skip past it. La 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 la.
correct.
But for spooky season, I felt like we should have a themed episode or whatever else.
Yeah.
But my God, I could have put 50 songs on
yeah.
this, and we could be
Yeah.
here for days.
Yeah, to your point, a lot of the music I think that we love sort of really overlaps with Halloween.
Yeah.
We like spooky stuff or creepy stuff, or I like things that are dark. I like, yeah, and we're not, Yeah, and probably no surprise to anybody that these lists are not 10 Beach Boys songs every every
No.
month, So
Yeah.
some of them are darker. So yeah, I feel it too. Like this is always a time of year. Like I love horror movies. I love a lot of this, earlier metal music. And yeah, I just feel like there's a lot of stuff I love that overlaps with Halloween.
It's sad that Halloween probably should come a little bit further into the fall season because I think we need more lead up. Like we go summer to spooky season and it doesn't last long enough. It's sad.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah,
I'm
I
sad.
think October moves entirely too fast for me.
It's
I think
true.
we could have it in
A bunch
November,
of
but
jerks.
it's got something to do with like the veil between the worlds being thin. I don't know that we can move it.
No, it's not really up to us.
I don't think
Yeah,
so. I think it's nether realm kind of stuff we're stuck with.
but I will say I know we can agree on this point. It's way too damn early for the Christmas ads. Y'all, stay in your damn lane. Leave us alone.
I know.
November
No.
1st, fine. You can have it.
Right.
Thanksgiving doesn't deserve it. I'm
Yeah,
okay with you.
I mean, I'm okay
taking
with
over,
Thanksgiving and Christmas being rolled together, but
Yeah,
after Halloween, right?
exactly.
I want to be
That's
able
all
to
we're asking
go.
for.
That's right.
That's a peace treaty we're looking for.
That's
here.
right. All Saints Day, it's all yours. The rest of the
Yes,
year,
it's
all
right.
yours.
I'm
Right.
sure the Mexican fans among us are like, wait, All Saints Day kind of important.
Saints Day
kind
kind
of
of
a thing.
important. That's true. If All Saints Day is important to your culture, send us an email and tell us why.
That's right. And we'll shut
Please.
up. Probably not.
That's right. We'll at least talk about your email. Bare minimum.
That's right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
No other guarantee. But yeah. So spooky season. So in honor of spooky season, we could have
Yes.
picked a zillion songs, right? Really hard to make this
Absolutely.
list. And lots on the cutting room floor here. Many apologies to all the awesome tunes for spooky season that did not make our list.
I
Just
will
not enough
say
room.
one that I have strong regrets not putting on here was Concrete Blonde's Bloodletting.
Yes, I love
Vampire
Bloodletting.
Song. The
The only
fine song.
Yes, I mean, we used to. My band used to cover that song. I know
Really?
Yeah,
I did not know
crack
that.
in the mirror and a blood stain on the bed.
So good.
Yeah, it's
So
great.
good.
It's a great song. Yeah, yeah. Go Concrete
Atmospheric
Blonde,
as hell.
an underappreciated band from
True.
the '80s, also with Joey, an amazing.
Their
tune.
version of Everybody Knows, astonishing. All right.
Yes.
Your song 6, closing out your list for spooky season, or the list that we're covering. Like
Yes.
we said,
Our spooky season.
Mob Rules by Black Sabbath.
Yeah. Sabbath.
So this is the Dio era of Sabbath. This is almost the end of the beginning of the Dio era of Sabbath, because he came back a couple times.
Yeah.
This song is very much a mood. It's not much of a story either. And I know that part of it was because they did this with the heavy metal soundtrack.
That's right.
Which is a whole thing. I've seen that movie. I don't know that I have any understanding of what that movie was trying to convey to me.
Okay.
But it was made by the French, so
what are you gonna do, Mobius? Yeah.
So weird. Although there's some great lines in that movie. Although one of them, a small tangent. So for those who haven't seen Heavy Metal, the movie, I'm sorry, but I'm going to talk about it anyway. There's a scene where there's a man on trial, and somebody that he's paid off to not say horrible things about him comes onto the stand and says horrible things about him. And I swear one of them was that he runs a nun prostitution ring.
I think a preschooler prostitution ring.
That may have been it.
Dope dressed as a nun.
Okay,
I think
so I meshed the two of those
together. Right. But clearly a horrific character. Yes.
That's become my go-to for saying someone is a bad person, is to say that they run a nun prostitution ring.
See, there you go. That's pretty bad. I mean,
you're not a good person if that's
it ticks a lot of bad boxes. No,
yes.
that's right. Whether you're religious or not, I think we can all agree that that's a bad person.
You are not a nice man or woman. You know what?
Exactly.
It's not gender.
We don't want to cast any gender.
Absolutely, you can be a bad person of any gender.
Or
no gender,
or no whatever. That's right. We are open.
So back to the song, the Mob Rules.
Right, the Mob Rules.
This is a fine song. I mean, it's Sabbath, and
it's Sabbath.
For the longest time, I was very much on the Ozzy Osbourne side of the
war,
Ozzy versus Dio divide.
Yeah.
But as I've gotten older, I think Dio has grown on me a lot more. Ozzy, it sounds dumb to say, but he's the flashier one. Dio, I feel like you can appreciate more upon the re-listen than the first time you hear it. And I think
Yeah.
this is one of those songs. Like the first time, I'm like, don't know what this is trying to say to me. But on
Right.
second, third, fourth listen, you're definitely like, hell yeah, the mob rules. Oh.
Right. Mhm.
I think it's not them at the top of their game, but it's
Absolutely.
definitely in the top 20. I would say
Yeah.
probably.
Yeah. I think
So
that's fair. Yeah. I I love this song because I heard it in that heavy metal movie, and that heavy metal
okay,
movie was important to me because I was real young when I saw it. It came out in '81, so maybe I was
yeah,
11 or something when I saw it, but I was way too young to watch it. Like whoever let me watch it. I am contributing to the
bad on you.
delinquency of a minor, but still, I'm very grateful. And yeah, my brothers were always into Sabbath, so I heard a lot of it growing up, and particularly like the Dio. Like this, they did this album after Heaven and Hell, which was the first Dio album, right? And was a great album, and I think has a lot of stuff. But I think we've even talked maybe about how when Dio steps in, Black Sabbath seems like they become more of a fantasy band to me.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
the material takes on a fantastical bent, and that's very Dio, right? He
Yeah.
carries that into his solo career.
Metaphorical.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But I'm fascinated by this one for a couple reasons. This was one of the first times when I could kind of understand what it was about that Black Sabbath energy that my brothers loved. Like that,
Mm,
there's just something about the this opens with like a guitar riff that I can only describe as like a bucking horse. Like it's crazy, and it's really like it makes me like I move when I hear it, and it's really tough. And they actually recorded this for the the movie
right.
and spent a very long time trying to re-record it on their own and were never happy. They never like this they're like, "Oh, this was the best version. We never
Huh.
captured it." This like they were really unhappy with the guitar sound. Apparently, I didn't know this, but Black Sabbath built their own studio around this time and abandoned it when they were ready to use it because they couldn't get the guitar sound out of it they liked, and so they went and hired another studio and
Wow.
did this album there. So yeah,
Let's just blow
it's
all of our money that we haven't spent on
yeah.
drugs.
Yeah, well, yeah, and so it's kind of it's an interesting time for the band with Dio kind of being the second album, and this song plays in the heavy metal movie during a scene where like this mutant army is attacking a city and like mowing down civilians, and it's perfect. Like it's the perfect it's the perfect song to foreground that, and it very much kind of backs up this sort of fantasy feel that the Dio music kind of brings to Sabbath. And so, yeah, there's just a lot about it that I like. And it sort of strikes me as one of those early moments as a kid where I'm like, ooh, that's really cool and dark. And like, and it goes and it fits perfectly with this scene of this like invading army. And it was at
Mhm.
that point that I realized, oh, like some of this music, like it's not all about reality. Like these songs aren't necessarily I think as a kid, I had a hard time like understanding how some of these things that were really dark, you would love, and but it wouldn't necessarily reflect on your personal experience. I don't know. I'm babbling. I've gone too far, Rob. But
I feel
yeah,
like Sabbath was always that band that when I didn't get it, I just thought it was drugs.
which it probably was. I mean, they were
Yeah,
on
there
a
was a
lot of
lot of that.
drugs. They were on a lot
Yes.
of drugs. But yeah, this one, I think in terms of songs, I think this is probably as good as that Sabbath band sounded like
Mm,
ever. I think, that era, like it was right after Heaven and Hell. It's a great sounding album. And this kind of continued on. And I think they made the Mob Rules album. And then that was kind of the beginning of the end for that
right.
configuration of that band. As you said, they would get back together again. And yeah, I guess now the Ozzy and Dio thing seems kind of silly to me. I'm like, they're two different bands. I'm like, really, you put those guys at the front of the band and they're
It's
totally
totally
different.
different.
And yeah,
Yeah.
and even the writing, like I was, reading a little about this, and they're like, yeah, the band like struggled when Dio came in because he really wanted like a hand in the writing and the direction and the story, where Ozzy was like, I'm just gonna like pass out over here.
Yeah.
Let me know when
Wake
it's
me up
time.
when I'm
Let me
singing.
know when it's time to sing. Yeah, right. And so it
Yeah.
really changed the dynamic. Anyway, so there's a lot of fascinating stories from kind of around this era of Sabbath. But yeah, it was kind of one of the first ones for me that I remember kind of peeked through my early pre-adolescent veil that thought that maybe heavy metal music was bad.
It's really interesting. I never had. Say, I'm the oldest in my family, so I didn't have an older sibling who introduced me into the metal. I had a cousin who was the same age, like 6 days
Okay,
older,
yeah,
and that was when I turned 13 or 14. So a lot of this stuff was a little slower for me to hit.
okay. So you wouldn't have gotten, yeah, you would have found it after that. Yeah,
Yeah,
see, my brother, I had my brother Tony in particular was like 10 years older than me, and he was a huge music lover, and I mean, hindsight, loved all sorts of stuff, like from Elton John to Sabbath, all sorts of stuff. The Cooper stuff I found. So, but I heard that stuff a lot, and my parents were very negative about it, and I think that affected how I saw it
yeah,
initially.
yeah.
I'm
It's
like,
got to
oh,
be good.
because yeah, exactly. Where do you get your ideas from? You get 'em from your parents to start with, and I'm like, oh, they thought that heavy metal music was probably bad, and so I think I just fell in and believed the same thing until later on when I'm like, but it's so good. I like it so much. It's so good. It can't be. The devil has all the best music,
That's right.
as it turns out.
He's only in charge of heavy metal and orgies. That's
That's
really his
right.
spear.
Well, have we come to
The final
the
song of this
final
episode.
the final song of this episode?
I think so.
Number 6, the bonus track on Robert's list is Black Number 1 by Type O Negative.
Back to the
And
well.
that's right, back. This is from, I believe, originally the 93 album Bloody Kisses. So
That's
not the
right.
earliest thing on our list, but pretty early, I would say. Um we've talked about Typo Negative before, and I think they're a perfect spooky season band because they walk that line between sort of like the horror and the campy horror. Like
Yeah.
they understand it. They understand it's there, kind of in a way that Zombie does, but they handle it
Yeah.
differently. Like they approach it.
Yep.
He's very theatrical, and they play it a lot straighter. They're like, we understand it, but we're gonna give
We're
it to you
still
kind of straight.
embracing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, we still embrace it, but yeah, we understand there's kind of this silly side to it too that we're gonna acknowledge. Which I really like. Like it seems like a way to 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 make that music open up for other people who might otherwise be kind of down on it. It certainly does for me. The fact that they kind of have that wink helps me.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. Yeah.
otherwise I would be like, "Oh man, I'm not down with that campy horror stuff like you guys." But if it's there, it's different. And yeah. Oh, yeah. This one, I think, even about 40 seconds in, there's like this monster style organ
Hmm.
that comes in. It's amazing. Um, but it's very spooky season. And I think, I don't know if you told me this or I just know this, but I believe that the black number 1 in the title refers to the hair dye
That is
color
correct.
that the goths would use and it
Hmm.
even sort of said, when your roots get, you'll dye them
Yeah.
black.
Your roots are showing. Yeah.
Exactly. And lyrically, this sort of walks the line. Like it's another one of those kind of like obsessed about the goth girl song and her milky white neck. I love it. I've decided I can sing like Typo Negative if I leave my mouth open after I finish every word. Oh, my milky white neck. He's got a great voice. I love it, but it's very
uh,
distinctive.
yes.
And again, it kind of walks that line like between serious and camp. Like you can tell that he's aware of it. But it's just really good. Like for me, that works to see an artist who's like toying with that idea but knows it's there. And it's fun how this kind of sweetly transitions from the verse, which is kind of like a harpsichordy sort of piano-y, very light kind of instrumentation, to like a super rockin' chorus, and then back to this kind of delicate verse setup. Like songs do it all the time, but these guys do it really well. Like it's like drops on a dime when it goes back to like that verse sound from this super heavy chorus, and it's just cool to see. I'm like, it's a production thing, but it's really well done. And it's another one where it's like it gets to this part where it's like loving you is like loving the dead. There's like a refrain and it sort of changes again and it comes back.
Yeah.
So it's another one of those songs. It's not I don't think of it as being sort of necessarily in movements like some of the others we've talked about, but it kind of is. Like it sort of does that. It moves. I feel like it becomes like 3 different songs for me over
Right.
the
Right.
course
Right.
of it. And I like them all and they all kind of fit together sort of seamlessly. So yeah, I mean, instrumentation wise, I love this. I love the way the guy's voice is, and I love kind of what he's playing with, which even sort of the lyrics sort of like poke fun a little at sort of the goth culture. You know, you're gonna dye your
Yeah.
roots. You know, you don't want to. You know, it kind of a little over the top. It's like I'm only gonna see her at midnight, and I'm like, you know, like a few things are like so goth that they're silly.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and yeah, and so I love that. I love the fact that it's willing to kind of like embrace both sides of it. It's like it can be creepy, but it can be maybe a little silly too. And it's okay. And those are, you know, two sides of the same coin. So yeah, I really like how they push it here. And another one I think just musically is a lot of fun. And yeah, and sounds like I'm curious if you found this in the 90s when it was new,
I
or did
did.
you
I
come by it
did.
later?
No, I found this song. If not this one, it was either this or Christian Woman I heard first.
Yeah.
Possibly on Headbangers Ball. I don't
Yeah.
really remember exactly.
Yeah.
But I did find it shortly after it came out. And I went, this is totally unlike everything I listened to, and I love it.
Yeah, kind of is.
And I totally, the fact that they are both in the culture or in the kind of the dark,
Right.
foreboding and scary,
Yeah.
but also able to laugh at it, able to be that sort of sarcastic fun and see Halloween should be like that. Halloween should be scary and funny and two-sided coin.
Yeah.
And that's a hard thing to get right, but I think when you get it right, it's magic. It's perfect.
Right.
So this one is, there even is in the song a little kind of whispered "Happy Halloween, baby."
See, I missed that,
so
but yeah,
I could not include it. I could not.
it is a very Halloween song and
Yeah.
a very Halloween band.
Yes.
I would imagine
Yep.
if you had to pick a band for your spooky season theme, you could do worse than
Yeah,
Typo
I
Negative.
think them, Catatonia, I really enjoy
Yeah.
for Halloween. But
Yeah.
Catatonia is not a band that has any humor to them. I mean, they're
They're
the
not,
dark
yeah.
Swedes of doom.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas Typo Negative had both, had
Yeah.
the both sides of that coin. So.
Yeah, and I think you and I both respond to people who both enjoy participating in a culture and also realize that some parts of it may seem silly to outsiders.
Yes.
And embrace that and kind of talk about, I think Cooper does that. These guys do that. They both kind of lead. It's like, I'm going to do this thing, and it's going to entertain the hell out of you. But I also know that there's some things about it that are kind of ridiculous, which I think is a kind of core attribute of the horror community, like the horror fandom in general, sort of in a lot of cases realizes that we love these things, but some of it is may seem silly to folks outside for various reasons, or campy, and parts of it are campy, but we enjoy that too,
Yeah, you can appreciate it on multiple levels.
Exactly, yeah, appreciate it on multiple levels is exactly it. Yeah, and I do think there's that nice, Halloween feels a little of both to me, right? It should be fun, but it also should be a little sinister. And so a band like Typo Negative, they're like, we are on. That's what we do. We do the sinister.
We have got this handled.
Exactly. Yeah. Nice. Black number 1. Did you ever dye your hair black?
No. The only thing I've done to my hair was there was a can of pink hairspray that would only last for a day or two. And periodically I would put a little pink stripe.
Yeah.
And just to see if anybody had mentioned it to me that I had a pink stripe in my blonde hair. And
no
one ever did.
No one ever did.
I'm so disappointed.
No, I've never dyed mine either. I mean, I have kind of poofy, froey hair, but Romaine offered, my wife offered, she said she had a purple dye. It's like, I'm dyeing mine purple. You want to go purple? So maybe, I don't know. Someday.
This could be your year.
This could be, right? Maybe I'll start with a stripe. I like that.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll just,
the racing stripe. I think it's good.
Start subtle, right? Maybe 2 stripes on the sides. I don't know. Yeah, we'll see. Like,
symmetry.
Yeah. Well, I think we've done it again. We've talked about 12
songs.
We got like 62 songs on our list.
I don't know how you do this math so quickly, sir. It's amazing. Whew,
it's amazing. It's a lot. It's pretty great.
So, are we going to stick with the theme and go with the Thanksgiving theme for next time? Or are we going to?
I gotta say, I don't know that
Christmas
I could
get
a Thanksgiving themed playlist. I think I would have the opposite problem. I had too many for the Halloween one, not enough for the turkey one. I do think, and I'm gonna mention this live on the program. I have not discussed this with Robert before. what do you think? I've been thinking about the concept of an album, and I think, what would you think about if instead of a bonus track next time, each of us picked an album that the other one would listen to in plenty of time, and just talk about it as an album and not not song by song, but talk about it. I know we've talked about that we struggle a little bit because some of our experiences are album centric and not really
Yes.
song centric. So I thought that might be a way to start to get in some of these ones where it's like, well, I don't want to pick a particular song and I don't want to pick every song off this album, but like there's something about this album as a unit that speaks to me or that means something to me. I thought, well, maybe that would be a way we could dip a toe in the album thing.
I like it. I
All
think
right, let's give it a
I
shot.
think I'm gonna have a hard time picking just one again.
I know. But
But
we'll pick. We can,
yeah.
if it goes good, we'll pick one each time if we want, or
Yeah.
maybe we'll do an album episode. I don't know. Who knows? But yeah,
Wow, kooky.
Oof, oh, it's like there are no rules, man. We're just
Man,
making it up as we go
First,
along.
you have to establish the rules so you can then blow them away. And
That's
then
right.
they're gone.
That's
Yeah.
right. We have established some rules, and we
That's
kind of
right.
broke them a little this time, and that's fine. I feel
I dig
fine.
it.
Yeah,
I feel like such a rebel.
exactly. All right, folks. Well, I think we will sign off and join you next time for at least an additional album and maybe some Thanksgiving or Christmas stuff. We don't know.
Yeah. If we can find turkey songs, we will bring you turkey songs.
Exactly. If you have turkey songs, send them to us. The email's in the thing there. Remember you got this? Yeah.
We will listen to them and go, no.
Yeah,
no,
we'll listen to
no,
them.
no.
If you send them, we'll listen to them.
Absolutely. But
I
we won't
guarantee
play
you
them.
that. That's right.
That's right.
We may not play them.
Yeah.
No guarantees beyond that.
Very
Well,
good.
thank you, Robert, for doing this.
Thank you,
sir.
Damon.
This is always a delight to talk to you about these songs. I always learn so much. And yeah, any parting words for our audience?
Don't eat the whole bowl of candy in one sitting. Make it two.
That's right. split it up.
Split it up. Yeah.
Split it up.
Don't push it.
That's right. That's all.
Thank you, everybody.
Spooky season wisdom from
That's right.
Robert and Damon coming at
And
you.
your dentist, probably.
Exactly. All right. Well, we will catch you all next time. Until then, goodbye.
See ya.
A Bandersnatch production.